But some are convinced intervention in Libya is all about currency, specifically Gaddafi's plan to introduce the gold dinar, a single African currency made from gold, a true sharing of the wealth.
It's one of these things that you have to plan almost in secret, because as soon as you say you're going to change over from the dollar to something else, you're going to be targeted. There were two conferences on this, one in '96 and another one in the year 2000, called the World Mataba Conference, organised by Gaddafi. And everybody was interested. I think most countries in Africa were keen.
Gaddafi didn't give up. In the months leading up to the military intervention, he called on African and Muslim nations to join together to create this new currency that would rival the dollar and euro. They would sell oil and other resources around the world only for gold dinars. It's an idea that would shift the economic balance of the world. Countries' wealth would depend on how much gold they have, not how many dollars they trade. And Libya has 144 tons of gold. The UK has double that, but 10 times the population.
If Gaddafi had an intent to try to reprice his oil or whatever else the country was selling in the global markets and accept something else as a currency, or maybe launch a gold dinar currency, any move such as that would certainly not be welcomed by the power elite today who are responsible for controlling the world's central banks. So yes, that would certainly be something that would cause his immediate dismissal and the need for other reasons to be brought forth for removing him from power.
It's happened before. In 2000, Saddam Hussein announced Iraqi oil would be traded in euros, not dollars. Sanctions and an invasion followed.
African resistance to AFRICOM was spearheaded by a figure who had emerged as a major economic and political force on the continent and had been a thorn in the side of the West for decades.
From the beginning of his political career as a leader, Muammar Gaddafi was opposed to a foreign military presence in Africa. One of the first things he did after coming to power in 1969 was to expel the British and US military bases in Libya itself. And Gaddafi had, considerable political support across the continent for his position. Nelson Mandela's view was almost identical to Gaddafi's, that there would be no African forces commanded by foreign military officials, and there would be no foreign militaries occupying any part of Africa or operating within Africa.
Gaddafi had been playing a complex game with the West for a long time. President Ronald Reagan had labeled him the mad dog of the Middle East and had tried to assassinate him in 1986 by bombing his palace. The Libyan leader's independence and influence flowed from the vast petroleum reserves, the largest in Africa, which he had nationalized when he took power.
Well, starting in the 1990s, Muammar Gaddafi became a kind of luminary, a leading voice, certainly one of the loudest voices, for a maximum vision of African integration. He was seen across Africa as being the successor of Kwame Nkrumah in terms of his vision of African unity. And it wasn't just a matter of nice-sounding words. Gaddafi was eager to not only accelerate the process of African integration, but of bankrolling the process.
The money from Libyan oil allowed Gaddafi to underwrite ambitious projects. $300 million for the first Pan-African satellite RASCOM. $30 billion in the largest irrigation system in the world that draws on the vast reserves of fresh water under the Sahara to turn tens of thousands of hectares of Libyan desert into farmland. Gaddafi demonstrated that Africa could develop without depending on the Western banking system or the International Monetary Fund.
Libya, to the tune of tens of billions of dollars in each case, was capitalizing a number of new African economic institutions, the African Development Bank, the African Monetary Fund. Africa would then develop its own solutions and develop its own lending programs to address its own problems. So Africa was, in Gaddafi's view, and with Gaddafi's leadership, increasingly becoming something of a bloc, rather than a series of disparate individual nations that could be dealt with one-on-one and set against each other.
When Gaddafi was elected chairman of the African Union in 2009, U.S. officials were concerned. In an embassy cable revealed by WikiLeaks, they noted that Libya will seek to use al-Gaddafi's chairmanship to aggrandize him and promote his United States of Africa proposal. U.S. multinationals were also unhappy with the Libyan leader, especially his decision to cancel a $1 billion deal with the Bechtel Corporation, the largest engineering company in the United States with powerful connections in Washington. The fact that an operator with Bechtel's savvy and deep pockets was ultimately unable to secure its contract serves as a cautionary tale for the many U.S. and Western companies seeking to enter Libya's booming market, and for other U.S. companies considering major investment projects here. Gaddafi also antagonized France. After being courted by President Nicolas Sarkozy, the Libyan leader canceled major arms deals.
On oublie à quel point Sarkozy avait déroulé le tapis rouge à colonel Kadhafi en décembre 2007 et le colonel Kadhafi, en échange, lui avait promis 14 milliards de dollars de contrats. Il y avait une shopping list absolument incroyable. Finalement, Kadhafi a ridiculisé Nicolas Sarkozy parce qu'il n'y a rien eu du tout ou très très peu de choses par rapport à ce qui avait été promis.
In March 2011, as the Arab Spring spread through North Africa, France and the United States decided to act. The United Nations Security Council gave its approval. Protecting human rights provided the justification.
Nos forces aériennes s'opposeront à toute agression des avions du colonel Kadhafi contre la population de Benghazi.
We hit Gaddafi's troops in neighboring Ajabiyah, allowing the opposition to drive them out. We hit Gaddafi's air defenses.
This was AFRICOM's first war, and its commander-in-chief was the first African-American president.
In the words of the Obama administration, the U.S. position in the war against Libya was that of leading from behind. And what is really interesting is, of course, the fact that the war was opened and directed first by AFRICOM, and then the mission was taken over by NATO. In other words, the people running the show, NATO, are themselves being run by the United States, which is formally in command of NATO. Not only that, in one of his speeches, Obama, after the bombing campaign had ceased and was praising the efforts of allies in Libya, revealed that even a number of French bombing missions were in fact piloted by American pilots. The intervention of Libya is also a way of sending a message to other African nation states that should they pursue a course of such radical defiance, radical independence, such a nationalist and anti-imperialist course, that there could be ultimate consequences that are no longer hypothetical. It stands as a clear signal to African nation states that these are the boundaries in which they are to operate, boundaries that have been set by U.S. military operations. Gaddafi is gone, so a major obstacle in the way of American military penetration of Africa has in fact been removed.
We came, we saw, he died.
Now Libya is a failed state. All the refugees fleeing out of Syria, fleeing out of Libya, fleeing out of North Africa is because of policies of the government of the United States of America and her specifically. Now, when they release all those emails that they haven't released yet,